Look at this, guys. We don't even need to attack with a weapon. This is a no weapon bunny build where all we do is just run around and everything just dies. We are actually playing this in the Endgame hard difficulty with every single one of the mods checked out, as this is the best way to play bunny, is to specifically speed farming the dungeons as well as basically the open world content. It's going to be one of the top tier Endgame builds. If you are interested in min-maxing, this is definitely going to be one of the best things to go and level up maybe other weapons, or if you want to go ahead and just farm certain things, this is going to be one of the top tier builds as you literally just run around. There is no slowing down. We have infinite mana, we also have infinite sprint, and on top of that, we just walk. I mean, it cannot get any easier than this. This is basically like playing with hacks on. Okay, so how does this build work? Now, I do gotta go ahead and let you guys know, this is an end game only build. It is not a build where you're gonna be able to start off and kind of play with that. If you need a maybe beginner build or an entry to the end game build, I will link 2 different videos that will help you get started because it does require very specific things. Otherwise, you're gonna be like, what the heck, this build does not work. So, for starters, what we need to actually stack is shields. There's very few players that will even run shields, but this build will actually benefit majorly by playing shields. And the reason why is because it specifically benefits on having our shields be our source of damage reduction because, well, we're going to have basically no HP. So for starters, let's explain some of the things first. So I'll go ahead and explain how we have infinite mana as well as like infinite resources. So how it works is Bionic Fuel is a Transcendent mod that decreases the speed of light but consumes HP instead of MP. So that's essentially how we have infinite mana. Now, as long as we are either jumping or moving, which is kind of how the build plays, even if we're like standing still, all we need to do is jump up and down, and you're just going to see like how big this AoE is. It will just kill everything. It is so great. They can't even come close to you, with the exception of bosses. I will admit, you're not going to be one-shotting the bosses, but everything else pretty much even in hard mode, with all of the mods maxed out, you will one-shot most of the things in the game. Some elites may take a couple ticks, I'm going to be honest, but by the time you walk by, it's dead. So, Bionic Fuel is what actually makes us lose HP. Now, how it works in the game is your movement speed is set to sprint on 800, but when you do activate the Bionic Fuel ability, because that's why our button for number 2, our C skill, is actually changed, that will give you a move speed of 1040, which is a really weird number. It's actually a 30% increase in movement speed. Normally, it's actually 1200. So you do lose out on some speed with your sprint, but it is infinite. Now, one thing that's really weird with this is how it works is it decreases your HP instead of using your MP. So that's how we have infinite resources. However, it never shuts off, meaning that if you cannot pay the resource, well, it just works anyways. So this is why this thing is super OP. Now, you're going to have no HP at all times. There are certain things that do bypass shields, just as a heads up. Basically, like certain ground dots will basically ignore it. So keep that in mind if you are playing. Yeah, there are certain things that will bypass this, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter. This is not like a bossing sort of a build anyways. So that's essentially how we have infinite mana and infinite resources. It's just this. As long as we're moving, we're going to be refilling up that bottom bar. Now, there's a thing that a lot of people may not know with Bunny, and that is your bottom bar, which is the non-MP one. That one is actually going to determine how much damage you do with these little lightning novas. Now, if we do crit, we can hit for about 250,000 even without min-max. Keep in mind, I don't even have everything min-maxed yet. And I'm going to actually suggest you guys mostly to not min-max with this because you don't need to, because right now we don't know when we get the new update how hard that content is going to be, so you may not have to invest in it. So Bionic Fuel is kind of our key thing right here. And I also want to mention, this thing, instead of costing more resources, when you level it up, it costs less. Normally, like the cost of like your modules go up and they get better. This one never gets better, but it only costs less the more you put into it. And then the next thing we're running is MP conversion. So if we reduce our MP, what's kind of nice is the way that it works with Bunny's lightning emission, which is the little lightning novas that we get infinite of, is the damage is based off of a percent of our MP. So if we can build up max MP faster because we have less MP, we get more damage. So that's where MP conversion comes in. So reducing your MP is actually good in this. As well as giving us cooldown reduction, so we have infinite lightning emissions. And then we have amplification control, which gives us extra shields as well as skill effect range. That's how mine is so big. That's another frequently asked question is, how is mine bigger? It's just skill effect range, that's it. But this one, it gives you a hybrid. You could just run the flat one. It will give you more numerical stats. However, well, we also run that one. So yeah, this is nice because it gives us extra shields as well. Keep in mind there is technically a limit on this. Like at 300 is the max that you can get, especially if you get it on your reactor. Like you can also go for skill range, it's not a bad thing, but keep in mind there is a limit of 300 of whatever the base is, and if you add the other multiplier on that, you'll get pretty close to it. Anyways, next up we have electric specialist, so it increases our electric skill power. If you're wondering why I don't specialize in singular, is because when we do a double jump, we also land and do a lightning nova, and that other smaller lightning nova also counts as electric damage. And then we run HP conversion because we don't care about HP, we only care about shields. Next up, we run increased shields. Next up, this over here, ideally I'd run the long grappling hook if I had it, but I was just running shock punch. And then we have technician, so that's going to be more skill power. There is a question that I got, and I think it's kind of important to answer. So there is your regular skill power, right? Whereas like it just says electric skill power. And there's also something called skill power modifier. So what is the difference? To not go into like a 10-minute video of the explanation of which ones are better in which circumstances, just know that when you're doing dot damage, a lot of these extra bonus ticks will benefit off of skill power modifiers because you have a negative multiplier versus multiplying the skill for more damage. You actually get a negative multiplier. So in that situation, skill power modifier is better when you are looking at like some sort of ticks on dots. So basically, they're both good. But it's really a test that you're going to have to do on skill-by-skill basis, and you're going to have to manually test it. It's fine, most of the stuff just dies instantly. Again, I'll admit, like, even on the hard mode bosses, you're not going to one-shot them, but you'll kill them within a reasonable time frame. Then we also run increased defense, this is kind of normal. Then we run shield collector. Now, unfortunately, the HP collector, I was thinking about running that, and I actually tried it. So what happens when you run shield collector versus the HP collector, if you wanted to be like, you know, why are you running shields when HP is way better? Didn't you say HP is better in your videos? Yes, and it is. However, on this build in particular, it can only consume HP, and it consumes it as a percent value, which means it doesn't matter how much HP we have, we can get like 500 million HP. It's always going to drain it on a percent amount, which means that no matter how much HP we get, it's just going to drain it. So that's why we play shields. Shield collector, it is less value, and on top of that, it's not even marked on where to get this. I just played, I got a couple. We got like 100 plus hours into the game. There's no spot where this actually like is marked to drop. So when some people are asking how do you get this mod, I just played the game and eventually it dropped because again it doesn't show up. You might have to go check out a wiki, or if someone knows, let me know down below and I'll make a small note, because you know that's kind of important, because it definitely is required for the build to play a lot smoother. But you could maybe get away without it if you happen to have modules where you get like shield in combat or out of combat, and you would just kind of enter and exit, but I'd rather just have it. It's just much easier. Then we run skill expansion, and then we get walk a tightrope. I don't have this module right now. In fact, the gameplay that you're seeing, this is what I'm currently running. It's the exact same thing. I just don't happen to have everything min-max. I would not recommend maxing out bionic fuel in terms of getting the catalyst on that. And then the last one over here, walk a tightrope, I don't have it at the moment, but I just wanted to give you guys the build because you guys really wanted it, and I'm still one-shotting everything. If I wanted to kill bosses with this is totally fine as well, but I will admit, if you want to kill bosses much faster, just pull out your weapon. The whole point of this was more of an experiment than anything, and the build was so good while I was streaming, every 5 seconds it was, how do you get infinite sprint, how do you get infinite mana, how is this like build? Do you have a build guide for this? So this is for you guys. But I'm almost done with it. I mean, you can see it runs. We did it in hard mode. Now I'm going to go do group runs because I wanted to prove that this can do all of the content in the game. You can do this in hard mode with every single difficulty checked. Now, for bosses, I'm going to have to kind of modify the build, and I kind of want to save that for another video as I have to invest into a little bit more testing, because bionic fuel, when you look at this compared to like high voltage or any of the other like damage Transcendant mods, because you're moving faster, you actually get a lot more defenses on the bosses. But the problem is that there are some bosses where they're standing in lava, and that becomes a problem because it goes and bypasses shields. So there might be certain bosses that are going to be very difficult, or you're going to have to drag for the build if you want to play bionic fuel. but Bunny's never meant for like a best boss killer build, but there is a pretty fast way to kill the bosses. I'm talking like a subpar, maybe 1 minute. I've already got this down to like 2 minutes on bosses, which is relatively respectable for a Bunny build, especially since I'm not even fully optimized yet for the boss killing build, but I'll drop a boss build very soon. But because the build over here does not use guns, it's very beginner friendly if you want to just go ahead and invest all into this, because Bunny is one of the best characters in the entire game, especially when you're looking at just farming dungeons, which is a huge way of getting other characters in the game. That's why I'm suggesting, you know, people to actually run this, which is super nice and beginner friendly because there's nothing else that even comes close to this. But as far as our gun goes, we don't even need to do really anything with the gun. So we do want to run whatever gun that will give us the perfect amount of movement speed, which is going to be like the SMGs. Just Thunder Cage is easy because everyone gets it. So I'm just going to recommend Thunder Cage, but all I'm running on my Thunder Cage that is important to mention is Defense Master. So what does this thing do? So Defense Master makes it so when I defeat an enemy, we gain a bunch of defense for 10 seconds, and it has a cooldown of 15. So it's basically up 2/3 of the time, and we don't even need to attack the enemies with the gun, and it will register, which is awesome. So it's cool stuff. But if you're on bosses, you definitely don't really need this like module. But we'll talk more about that when I get into like the boss version of it, because we're gonna have to swap out some mods. But I'm gonna try to keep the mod sockets the same. But don't worry about Walk a Tightrope or Bionic Fuel in terms of changing these sockets, because those two sockets, I'm thinking about leaving them open, because when you actually socket in a module that's not the right little like attribute, it actually costs more, so it's something where we'll have to consider in terms of like really late endgame, because I want this build to be able to do everything, and right now it's just like the greatest like dungeon farmer or any like speed run. It's just so incredibly good. So all you need is Defense Master. Now as far as the Reactor, there's a lot of variants. You can get increased duration, you can get skill range, electric, singular, anything that can benefit your build. There's not like a really strict thing. Now as far as the other changes that I want to go ahead and mention over here, I was running 2 parts of the Supernova set. However, the most important thing to get your shields up, what I would recommend is just whatever is giving you max shield, and then like get one cold res, 1 fire res, 1 toxic res, 1 electric res. I mean, that's kind of like the ideal thing. But I think the most important thing with this build, because you have to stack shields in this build if you want it to actually function. And the reason why you have to stack shields is because a lot of your shields actually specifically comes from your gear's rolls. Like if it rolls like purple, you know, gold and blue, that matters quite a bit because you're scaling so much into shields. So definitely consider getting shields on your pieces of gear as the main priority versus getting, I don't know, Kuiper Shard or like any resistances. The shields is going to be the most important thing to go ahead and consider. So keep that in mind when you are making this build. That is something that you're going to need to get, otherwise you will not actually have enough shields and you're going to feel too squishy. We're almost at about 6k right now, and I'm subpar optimized. I would say maybe you can push towards 8k towards the higher end, but don't expect to get like 15,000. But remember, this build will have way more defenses than other builds, as well your gun just gives you a huge number. It's 128, which is basically almost the same as another module. You can also, instead of Walk a Tightrope, if you want to go ahead and run even more defenses, that is another option. But I'm not going to make this video any longer than it needs to be. But that's basically how we have infinite mana and infinite sprint, and the infinite novas to continuously go along, and we don't even have to shoot. And I love this because it is the easiest build in the entire game to play. You literally activate your Bionic Fuel once, and you never need to activate it again. Now, another bonus tip I do want to give you guys, though, is if you notice you can't, like, go in your inventory and salvage gear, when Bionic Fuel is activated, the sprint thing, because it's draining your HP constantly, how it works is it considers you, like, taking damage. So you have to activate that again if you want to salvage your gear. Just another bonus tip over there, because like sometimes I was doing it in the very beginning. I'm like, why can't I salvage my gear and stuff? And it's because you need to turn that off, because again, it's draining your HP. Anyways, that's gonna wrap things up. If you guys want an update to this build and you're brand new here, make sure you guys are subbed with the bell notification on. I'll give you guys the boss version of this later down the line. Once we get it min-maxed a little bit, I mean, it's going to be good for all content. I think it's going to be one of the top tier builds in the game. This way you don't have to swap different characters, and you don't even have to level up guns. It's awesome. It's just the character, and you're going to be good to go. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And if you have any questions, let me know down below. And now we have a good build website, so I'll also link that. Anyways, peace out.